AD. Now, how about them Frogs? TCU goes into Austin, and how about K-State? They come into Waco. TCU pretty much dictated it. Texas's defense played as well as they possibly could. TCU wins again on the road in a tough environment. And Kansas State came in here and took football soul away from Baylor, at least for one weekend.
TCU proved, I think, to a lot of people that they can win games under a lot of different circumstances, which was, the narrative about their game control. But they're still fourth anyway. But I think that was a nice little chip in their corner to go down to Texas and play a game that the offenses for either team weren't exactly, rewriting the stat book, especially for Texas. Their touchdown came on defense. And Kansas State came in here and laid waste to Baylor. Absolutely laid waste to them. They drove a silver and purple truck over and over and over the Bears again and again and again. And this was every single problem Baylor's had during the year kind of all combining at once, or the overall theme of nothing works at the same time and nothing worked at all, really, on Saturday night.
Yeah, TCU looked terrific in that win. I mean, not that it was, some blowout, perfect victory, but just being able to overcome another situation where they were on the ropes a little bit in a low-scoring game, which is not what most people expected going into this one. If anything, I think most would have predicted a shootout of some sort with these two teams, but they showed up on defense in a major way. They've, probably not got enough credit for that side of the ball because the offense has been good, but when the offense wasn't able to move as well because of UT's defense playing pretty well, it was the Frogs defense that answered in kind and put on a show of their own and really made life hell for Quinn Ewers and company. Shut down Bijan, not the game at all, like I said, that I think anybody expected either way, to be so low scoring and for both sides to struggle to score against the opposing defense. I thought was just really interesting stylistically that's what it came down to, but it made for an interesting contrast. And, again, just credit to TCU for just having that belief and that ability to not ever get too, panicked or get let the moment get too big for them. They just kind of stay steady, and in the end, so long as they have a chance at the end of the game, you're going to put your money on them to take it home more than you will probably any other team in the country right now, because that's just what they've done time and time and time again, and you keep waiting for them to run out of luck or whatever you want to, believe it is, but it's well beyond that at this point. It's just what they do, and they're very good. You can't expect them to lay down and roll over. They're going to fight till the very end, and that's why they're unbeaten right now, because if they didn't, then they wouldn't be. So just very impressed by their resiliency, and for them to go down there in a situation where, they could have had an off week, or they could have, not shown up like Baylor did, or whatever the case may be. But I think that they're well aware. I think they're having fun. I think that's very clear, and I think they're well aware of what a special group they have and what's on the horizon potentially for them, and they're using that as motivation and taking full advantage of it. And I think that's that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to love moments like that. So very impressed by that. And then K-State, I mean, they did basically whatever they wanted to against Baylor. That was an awfully disappointing showing for Baylor. K-State deserves an immense amount of credit for the way they performed in all three phases. But I think you can also say at the same time that was just an inexcusable kind of showing for the Bears. I mean, to have a home night crowd and to have an opponent like K-State walking in and to have Big 12, opportunities on the line and to just get blown out on your home field, not score other than a field goal. I mean, a field goal, guys, that's all they mustered on offense. Now, granted, they didn't have a bunch of possessions, but that was what K-State drew up perfectly. I kept referring to it as basically what Baylor went to Lubbock and did, except for they did it way better, and there was never a question. Whereas with the game in Lubbock, the third quarter got a little close for a second there. But other than that, Baylor kind of controlled that game. This one, K-State never relinquished control. I mean, it was theirs ever since once Blake Shapen threw his first interception, the game was over after that. And it was
97 yards later.
Yeah, 97 yards later they score, and that helped. Yeah, that capped it off. But it's just like as soon as he threw that pick, and then they took it down the field and scored, as you said, 97 yards, which does need to be mentioned. That game was over, and it was a weird night. Like I don't even know how to feel about this football team because here we are, we're 11 weeks into this thing, and they're still dealing with week 1 problems as far as chemistry, as far as focus, as far as their mental game. And I don't even know how is that even possible? Like, how is that even possible to be this deep into the season and still struggling with those types of things and motivation? Like, that's K-freaking State, man. That's a top 25 team that's in the Big 12 mix, and you basically just rolled over.
Well, one of the things I asked him,
man.
I'll let you continue. Dave Aranda, I had a chance to visit with him one-on-one. And the first part of his interview, he goes back into those 3 things that have been kind of an issue and how he wants his guys to see it green and all that. But I asked, you've been saying this for 10 weeks now.
Exactly.
And I asked him that. How can you be doing this 10 weeks into it? And I also asked him, just as a tease, do players perhaps take advantage of you and your demeanor or your personality? It's a fair question. And there are answers from Dave Aranda. Let me tell you something. He's sick to his stomach. He knows that the fans showed up, showed out, were loud. It was perfect. And yet his team was absolutely invisible.
If they had lost the game, that's fine. Lose the game, that's cool. But when you have a showing like that and you lose 34-3, and it's not even really that close, that's where it's like that's inexcusable. That's why I go back to that word, because it was so lopsided that there was never even really a fight. You never even really threw a punch, and that's the tough pill to swallow. There's no shame in losing to Kansas State, but there is in losing like that at home. In a night game with a nice crowd. This is how Tech felt a few weeks ago, when Baylor rolled in, kind of spoiled their night. I think it's similar to that in some ways, except for without the personal underlying kind of stuff bubbling. But, give all the credit in the world to K-State. They handled their business, and now they're in the Big 12 race as a result.
You guys remember when Mike Tyson fought that McNeely guy?
Yeah.
It was like right after Tyson got out of prison, and McNeely was there, and you knew it was just going to be a warm-up fight for Tyson, but you thought it would have gone a couple rounds, and the minute that McNeely got punched by Mike Tyson, he said, "This is a bad idea.
Yeah.
I'm stopping this."
Yeah.
That was kind of how it was the other night.
Here's the stat on Will. Craig, finish. Get the stat on Will Howard out for a second. Not yet. Not Garrett. Not yet. Garrett, take it down. Okay. Go ahead.
I lost my train of thought now.
All right. Here's a stat on Will Howard. The biggest decision in this game was this one. When Adrian Martinez, who has not been healthy, has not been 100%, got sacked on a 4th down by like 8 or 9 yards, had no chance. I'm not sure if he froze up, he just didn't read the defense, or Baylor just made a hell of a play because it looked like a hell of a play. Kansas State went to Will Howard. Here's his last 3 games. He has thrown 9 touchdowns his last 3 games, the most touchdown passes in 3 consecutive games by a Kansas State quarterback since Josh Freeman 14 years ago, Al Roberson 19 years ago, and Chad May back even earlier than that. He always was one step ahead or one decision or second away from sacks, sack strips, fumbles, whatever. He was amazing. You got to remember where you're going with that? Okay. All right. So the Big 12 standings. TCU has a 2-game lead over Kansas State. Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Texas are all floundering, trying to figure out, can they catch K-State? They're all 4-3. Oklahoma State, OU. Baylor, TCU in Waco. Fox Saturday will be here. Texas at Kansas. We could all create whatever you want on that because of what KU's been able to do a couple of times. Texas Tech had a nice win, by the way, at home. And then TCU plays at Baylor. That game, of course, I mentioned that game.